So very welcome everybody to another P&T Tea Talks. My name is Eduardo from Paper&Tea. Today we're actually going to be trying one of the latest teas we launched. Okay, let me introduce to you Wild and Raw. Okay, this is a dark tea. It's actually a Sheng Pu'er. And today we will be talking a little bit about what pu'er is, what dark teas are, this Sheng Shu thing. So first of all, if you haven't watched, we have already our session 7. It's online in our Instagram TV, where we tried our Vintage Lotus, which is the other dark tea we have. So if you want, it would be useful for you to watch that session as well, so you can understand a little bit of both teas, both styles of teas. But first, to dive into what dark teas are, we classify teas based in big changes that happens to the leaf. So big physical and chemical changes that happens to the leaf, and that's how we got green teas, black teas, white teas, etc. So as a big classification, we also talk about dark teas. Okay, so that's one of the types of teas, dark teas. And dark teas are fermented teas. Not like oxidation, that is what actually happens in black teas. Fermentation is a biological process that happens with the help of microorganisms. Okay, so it's basically bacteria that changes the leaves, the physics, the chemistry, and eventually, so these alter all the flavors, all the aromas that we will be experiencing in our cup through the fermentation process. This is a process that we've been using for a long time, not only for tea, but you can see different products such as wine, beer, cheese, yogurt, and so on. So it's not something weird, it's not something uncommon, it's something that it's very used in the production and development of different products that we consume. So we do it with tea, and we create this category that it's called dark tea. There is a little debate because actually some people would refer to this category as pu'er. I personally like to make the difference between pu'er being a region and a tea coming from a specific place versus being a type of tea. Of course, we understand pu'er teas as these fermented teas that come from Yunnan province. Okay, so it's a fact that most of the dark teas are actually pu'er. Okay, they come from this area. We understand that also in Yunnan there are weather conditions that are unique for the production of these kinds of teas. But nowadays, this process has been starting to be replicated in other regions within China, in other countries outside of China. So now I think the word pu'er, the name pu'er, which refers to a place, actually is not longer valid. Okay, so we would refer to pu'er mostly to whatever is produced in the area of Yunnan. And actually, nowadays we can have white pu'ers, green pu'ers. We have a white pu'er in our selection. But now we're actually going to talk about fermented tea. So dark tea that is coming from pu'er. Okay, so usually there are two words that you will hear when we talk about dark teas, and particularly pu'er, that is shou and sheng. So this is shou and sheng are the two styles of fermented teas. Just as we have, for example, in green teas, Chinese style, that is the roasted one, and Japanese style, that is the steamed one. With dark teas, we also have these two different styles. The shou, also known as cooked, and then the sheng, also known as raw. Okay, so cooked is basically a tea, the Vintage Lotus that we have, session number 7. If you want to check it out, cooked teas are teas that I actually control the fermentation process. So I take care of the temperature, the humidity. I actually cover it and sort of cook it and make the fermentation happen very fast. I mean, very fast. It takes at least a month or so, but still like faster than what would happen if we let this fermentation to happen naturally. So Sheng Pu'ers, in this case this body here, a Sheng Pu'er is a tea that the fermentation process happens naturally. We let it just ferment by himself, and usually this actually takes a lot of time. It takes years for a tea to be fully fermented in natural conditions. So and these also includes the fact that we age these teas. So it's not just ferment, but also we age it. And teas are actually very, very appreciated when they are extremely old. When we aged, actually the flavor of the tea will change in time, developing new aromas, developing new flavors, and you can actually find these kind of pours that have been aged for 30, 40, 50 years, even some over 100, and it's incredible the taste and flavors that they and aromas they develop within time. Okay, so Shank pours would be these teas are naturally fermented. We just let and they usually, some people actually refer to them as green teas. So they are kind of like a green tea because when we pluck the leaves, the first thing we do is actually we stop the oxidation. So we use a similar process to what we would use in a Chinese green tea. So we roast the tea a little bit, and not as very high temperatures because we don't want to destroy all the microorganisms living there. Okay, we want to keep them so the fermentation process can happen. Okay, so then this fermentation starts. So it actually kind of Shank pu'er would start as a green tea that eventually will ferment and will age and will transform. So what we have today here has actually, as I said, it's called wild and raw. So the raw part of the name it explains by being a Shank pu'er, which translates as raw. Okay, but why do we also call it wild? And this is a very interesting concept because in the world of tea, usually tea can come from two sources. One is a tea plantation that is established and that has like just a lot that you can actually see them. They are beautiful. You see a lot of the same tree everywhere. And then you can also have wild tea trees. Okay, so when we talk about wild tea trees, we talk about tea trees that have grown wildly in an environment and they coexist with other different species. Okay, so it's not like strict tea plantation that all trees are in line, the trees just grew, and these kind of trees, these wild tea trees, they are usually very old because this happened a couple hundred years ago. So actually our Shank pu'er or wild and raw, it comes from trees that are over 100 years old. You can find teas that come from older trees, that's for sure. This one is for about over 100 years old, and they grow wildly. So they grow and they interact actually with a lot of different other trees, and there is a whole ecosystems around them besides just having another of the same tree. Okay, so it's actually like a tea forest. And here I'll show you. Here I have no leaves actually. So I'll show you the leaves, and they are very different. You can see some very dark leaves, some white buds. This tea is actually beautiful because you can see exactly what was harvested. Can you see? So this actually it's called matcha, and this is the first stage. So when they do the tea, this style, usually this tea will be pressed. I don't know if you've seen, but there are like the poor teas and dark teas. They usually pressed, so we can keep them for a long time. But before they press it, we call them matcha, and it's like the loose leaf version of these dark teas. In this case, this hasn't been pressed, so we just kept it like this. Look at this, so pretty. You can see exactly what was plucked. So we just kept it like this, and usually these teas we don't tend to wait that much to drink it. It's just like a young Shank pu'er. The more we let it age and ferment, the more they will transform into more mature aromas and flavors. But this one will keep very green, very fresh, raw. So that's why the tea is called wild and raw. And I'll go ahead and start brewing it. I'm using actually water at 90 degrees for this one, so it's kind of like hot. And of course, this tea, I'm brewing it Gongfu style because we're talking about a very, very, very traditional tea from China. This one in particular comes to us from Yunnan province, of course. It's a pu'er, so it comes from Yunnan province. And Yunnan is actually a very, very big region. So actually, it's kind of like in the south of the region, and this tea in particular come from Linzang, which is an area a little more located in the north of the province. Okay, so here I'm gonna go ahead and put the tea here. It has some beautiful big leaves. Usually trees that are used in Yunnan area, especially if they are wild tea trees that have been growing for a long time. They tend to have these very big leaves. And I'll actually go for, as I always do when I'm doing these kind of infusions, for not a pretty long infusion, I'll just go ahead and pour it almost right away. Usually here when you're pouring like this, you can control the pouring. If you see that the tea it's not ready yet, you can pour very slowly, and then if you feel like the tea is almost ready, you can go ahead and pour faster. Okay, so here we go. And for this tea we have kind of like a greenish infusion. There you go. You see it's very clear, very transparent green, like sort of golden green. I'll see here what we have. And then usually, well, this is a very young. It's actually from 2019, so it's from last year, spring last year, and then so it's been aging and fermenting for a year. This Maocha, which means it's still very green. We still feel a lot of like those sort of like vegetable notes, but we already feel the fermentation happening. So there is this very particular note that we feel usually in pu'ers in general, which is like foliage, like the if you think of a park of a day of rain, or like the earthiness with like kind of like compost, the old leaves in autumn, that's kind of like the smell that you can feel. And usually when it's a tea that is young like this, so it's not fermented completely, and it's fermenting naturally, they tend to be like a little bit more fresh and green than more vegetal than when they are overcooked, like really like woody kind of thing. So it still remain very vegetal, very green with these notes of foliage, kind of like fruity as well. This is actually, I really enjoy these kind of teas. They are fresh, they are kind of light, they have a very nice astringency, and they have sort of like a really nice energy to it. They leave you in a kind of really good mood after you're drinking it. It's not just about the experience that you leave while drinking it, like the textures and flavors and aroma, but it's also the feeling you have after you drank the tea and how it makes you feel. So here also, usually I always kind of feel like a little like this mineral note. We have to think for wild tea trees, for teas that are very old, we get a very strong root system from the plant. So a plant that has been growing their roots for 100 years, of course, has very long and deep roots. So they get to grab a lot of different nutrients, and they get to create teas that are very rich and very complex. Something different from a very young tea plantation, that the roots probably they are not so strong, they don't go so deep, so they can't take so much nutrients, as many nutrients as an old tree. Okay, so here I feel this greenness, this sort of foliage kind of things that I was talking about, that it's very typical in fermentation. A little bit of mushroom. It reminds me a lot of like a couple of cheeses, maybe like blue cheese kind of thing, but in a very nice and delicate way of something you actually want to drink. These teas are very interesting. I've found how a lot of people, this sort of tea would be easier to understand that sometimes shopware that are extremely that are completely fermented, and then they have this very intense note that you can talk about like a forest in a day of rain, but for some people actually it's like a barn or basement, and the smell is not usually so nice. But these ones that they are like these Sheng styles, especially when they are young, they remain very green, very vegetal, even like a lot of flowers going on. So they are a really good experience I've seen for people that want to start into the world fermented teas, of dark teas in general. I think they are very, very interesting. Okay, so I'll see if you have any questions. Are you pu'er lovers? Are you dark tea lovers? I know dark teas generate a lot of debate. I'm not a pu'er specialist. I've been to Yunnan. I've been to Sichuan, I've been to pu'er in several mountains around the area. But I would say actually pu'er is probably one of the most complex of all type of teas. Some of them are really easy to understand, but in terms of pu'er, it's extremely complex. I believe that the fact of beside the fermentation, you have the aging process and a lot of different things that makes the topic of pu'er or dark teas in general, even though they come from one specific region, it makes it extremely complex to understand. It's a very broad topic just to learn about pu'ers. That's why I encourage you, if you haven't seen the session 7, go ahead and watch Vintage Lotus from our Instagram TV. So I'll see if you have any comments, if you have any questions. I love this tea. It's sweet and very nice sensation under my tongue. Yeah, it actually has this very, it doesn't have a strong astringency or anything. For me, it has a very nice body. It's very smooth, but it leaves like this kind of, this very, I don't know, it's like a sensation in not just in your mouth, but for me it's like a whole. We usually in tea, it has a name, we call it cha tea, which is like the energy of the tea. Like when you talk about martial arts in movies and they talk about the chi that they have to concentrate, that's something that you can actually feel in some teas, like the energy of the tea. This is kind of like a very sort of like spiritual kind of approach to tea, but it happens a lot, especially with these kind of teas that come from trees that are very, very old. It's not something that we can relate to every kind of tea, but teas that are very old, they usually tend to have this very high, rich energy and concentration. So honey notes, yes, there is some honey there. Greta, hello. Any special reason you choose the teapot today and not a guy one? Well, I could have used a guy one. You know what? I used a guy one. When was it? It wasn't yesterday, or did I use? I think I used one yesterday. I try to vary. Like I don't use the same thing every day. For this one, I could have easily used a guy one. Yeah, today I decided to go for this. Yeah, no particular reason. Why is it that a clay teapot makes pu'er tea more fragrant? That's a very nice question. I'm using a glass teapot. So a glass teapot allows me to use it with different kinds of tea because glass it's not porous, so it doesn't absorb any aromas. So there are some teapots that are very famous called in China Yixing teapots. So Yixing is a place that has a very nice clay. So when you have this kind of clay teapots, they are porous inside. So it means the tea actually can adhere to the walls of the teapot. So the more you use a teapot, the more the teapot gets impregnated in the taste and flavor of the tea. So actually, when you're using clay teapots, you should make sure you only use one teapot for one type of tea. You shouldn't be mixing them because otherwise you will be extracting different things from different type of teas. So what we do when we use clay teapots is that we infuse, and by using the same teapot, the teapot starts absorbing aromas, and the teapot itself starts giving aromas and flavors to the tea with time. So that's why they create this. And then we also have to think of the minerality of the clay. Certain areas around the world, they are famous for having clays that are exceptional for the enhancement of the flavor of tea. It's basically mineral composition and the reaction with the tea. They can make it more alkaline or less alkaline. It's a lot of chemistry involved there, but yeah, clay teapots are actually very good, but you should, as I said, focus on having just one particular teapot for each particular tea, not mixing them, not doing pu'er and then a white tea and a oolong, and because then you'll affect the flavors of the teas. The cooked ones, are they stronger in taste? They not. I don't know if stronger is a word. They are different. They get because you can find also Sheng on raw dark teas that can be very intense in flavors, but it's to me a cooked one has more aromas and flavors that tend to be warmer. While this is way fresher. It also depends because actually Sheng pu'ers that have been aged for a long time, they tend to go into something cooked. The idea of the cooked was basically that it took so long to make dark teas, in this case to make pu'ers, that they needed years to be fermented, that at the end they thought, oh, well, if I control temperature, if I control humidity, then actually I don't need to wait that long and I can make that process happen very fast. So you get kind of like the idea of a tea that would ferment for 30 years is not the same in terms of like acidity and flavor and aroma and complexity is not the same because it's like if you want to, I don't know, cook meat in, when they say, okay, you need to put it in the oven for I don't know, 8 hours at 100 degrees, and then you said like, oh, I want to do it faster, and I'm gonna cook it for just 1 hour. I'm gonna use 200. So at the end you'll be able to eat it, but it won't taste the same. It won't be as good. Okay, so kind of like the same with this cooked and Sheng version. So cooked in a way, I can drink affordable. It's easier. It's faster to get this kind of fermented teas. Of course, there are different qualities. I can have amazing teas produced in this way as well. It doesn't mean that cooked is bad and Sheng is good. On the other, same thing the other way. I can have Shengs that are not very good quality anyway. So, but it's a different aromatic profile. It's a different, even for example, if you look at the color, this is like greenish. It's lighter in body, while the other one, it's very, 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 very intense and dark. Yeah, actually in Chinese, these kind of teas, fermented teas, would be referred as hei cha, which actually means literally that black tea. Okay, there is like a little problem with the translations in there, but yeah, we understand this as fermented teas. Okay. So I started my dark tea with Vintage Lotus. Great experience. Next on the list, Wild and Raw. Well, if you they are different. I know people that loves Wild and Raw and they don't really like Vintage Lotus because they are different styles. But that's the thing. I mean, the process is the same. The fermentation is what changes the tea, and then you have these two different styles. Okay, so it's part of the classification, and then of course. Sheng pu'ers, since they age, they have this very nice thing about how, because if I keep this tea for many years, the flavor will change. It's a tea that I usually age, so it's a tea that in a way represents tea philosophy in a very beautiful way. That it's a tea for the moment. Whatever I'm drinking today. Whenever I decide to drink it again, the tea will change. It won't be the same. So it also talks a lot about like the mindfulness of tea and how you really focus on what you're drinking right now. And Sheng pu'ers actually do it very well. And also, it's more of like a geeky tea. I mean, like a lot of like tea geeks or tea nerds. Eventually, this is where you start like challenging yourself and drinking these and infusing them. And trying different styles like teapots, different sort of teapots with clay, using gaiwans, and yeah, they are, as I said, this is probably by far one of the most complex types of all teas. So yeah, this is like another level. If you want to be tea geeks, if you're into tea, this is something you should start drinking, and it will give you a lot of pleasure. So I prefer Wild and Raw than Vintage Lotus, definitely. Well, as I said, it's actually a matter of taste. So it's not a right or wrong. It's not a good or bad. It's basically what you like the most. It's like saying I like Chinese green teas or I like Japanese green teas. I mean, it's not that the other one is bad. It's just different, and it's up to your taste. I personally have something that I cannot decide very well, so I like them all. I don't have a favorite. I know I love like Taiwanese oolongs the most because I live there, but in general I don't have a favorite. I can drink all type of teas, and usually I don't dislike them. Just bad quality ones, but in terms of varieties, I like them all. So, if you don't have any more questions, as I said, I'll suggest you to check on the Vintage Lotus session we had on Instagram TV. I will wish you a very nice rest of the afternoon. I'll see you tomorrow with another tea. Remember, we have 2 seminars going on in the next weeks. One this Saturday is actually an introductory seminar. It will be online. You can buy your tickets in our website, and then you get the tea sent to your house. And then we also have black tea focused in Africa. I mean, not a black tea, it's a Kenyan tea tasting. It will be a guided tasting, also online, where you will be able to try our 3 fresh harvests from Kenya. That's also happening in a couple of weeks. Tickets are also online available. Okay, so have a good day, take care, and I'll see you tomorrow with another tea. Bye.